become a Confederate general. Pickett's charge at the Battle of Gettysburg remains one of the most famous moments of the entire war and marked a major turning point. U.S. relations with Britain actually soured during the war. The British, missing their supply of southern cotton, initially looked like they may intervene on the side of the Confederacy. There was the Trent Affair, when Confederate diplomats were discovered and arrested on a British mail steamer. And then there were the British-built ships, sold to the Confederacy, that wreaked havoc on northern commerce. When the Civil War ended, furious American politicians called on the British to pay reparations. And by now, a long list of hot issues existed between them. And yes, on that list remained, 12 years later, still the issue of who owned these gosh darn islands. That issue, it was finally agreed, would be submitted to international arbitration. The Empire of Germany would decide, with the British and Americans presenting arguments. The American argument was reportedly presented with a little more pizzazz, a little more zing. And in the end, when the Germans made their decision, they awarded the San Juan Islands to the United States. When an aging Douglas heard the news, he said that there was no possible way the British argument had been presented correctly. But that was that. The British conceded. And on the 25th of November, 1872, the last British troops left the island. As the Americans entered the British camp to raise their flag, they found that the British had removed the flagpole. One last up yours to Uncle Sam. By this time, Charles Griffin had already left the island, and the Hudson's Bay Company, a dangerous situation that almost brought two great powers to war, triggered by the shooting of a pig. But thanks to more level-headed minds and an eagerness for peace and cooperation, conflict was avoided, and the only casualty of this pig war was, well, just a pig. But how different could things have been? What if the British had attempted to arrest Pickett? What if they had landed troops? Could the two sides have actually gone to war? Could America have invaded Canada? Could it, perhaps, still invade Canada? Think about it. Why not? We have the manpower. We have the arms. It's our manifest destiny. Picture a future where American Mounties wear red, white, and blue and hail the stars and stripes, where Wayne Gretzky would wave the American flag every 4th of July in the streets of Montreal. Maple syrup, the greatest American food. Banff, the greatest American national park. One united nation under the leadership of our glorious president, Drake. No longer shall we tolerate our snug neighbors to the north with their affordable insulin and endless comments complaining that I don't talk about Canada enough in my videos. That's right, Canadians. Watch your backs. Sleep with one eye open tonight, because Biden's coming, baby. And this time, he's coming with a vengeance! This video was made possible by NordVPN. Click the link below and get an exclusive deal with a huge discount and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Introducing our new, glorious, breathtaking bucket plushie. Limited quantity, available now, along with some character pins. Buy them, or I'll marry your mother. It's your choice.
Oh, Marcellus, you sure have a lot of dignitas.
Well, is. Well, I was just wondering, what makes us so great? How did we come to be? Wow, my son. Let me take you on a journey to this side of the room. The story of Rome begins with these beautiful baby boys. Some sheep of money makers. That's gross. You're gross. Sorry, son. They are called Romulus and Remus, and when they grew up in 753 BC, they found out. But there was just one problem. They couldn't agree on which of them should be the king, but they worked it out peacefully. Oh, heavens. Romulus caved Remus's picture. Our first king committed fratricide? Look at his face. Looks like the greatest civilization, Dad. Well, you see, at first Rome was full of men. Talking about great civilization. So we invited some neighboring cities over for a big feast. And then we literally kidnapped all of their women. Here's a picture. Look at that one. This is messed up. You're messed up. Oh, sorry. You better follow. So then, after centuries of monarchy, those tyrannical kings started getting too big for their britches. So we overthrew the kings and established Rome as a republic. Is that when all the killing stopped? Oh, heavens no. That's when the killing surged, baby. We went wild and conquered the Latin League, the Samnites, the Etruscans. Woo! What a rush! Dad, Rome seems pretty barbaric. I forgot to tell you about the time a prophet told Saturn his son would one day overthrow him. So Saturn literally ate his own son seconds after he was born. Here's a picture. Dad! Look at that! That's messed up, man. Are we really this uncivilized? Hey, some Phoenicians in Tyre had a mega surplus of goods and decided to export those goods across the Mediterranean. They became the dominant trading power in the region, and to support their growing trade network, the Phoenicians established a number of colonies, one of which was Carthage. Therefore, Carthage began its life as a Phoenician trade colony, and the Carthaginians were actually Phoenicians. Or, if you're a Latin-speaking Roman, they were Punic, hence the name of the video. Over the centuries, Carthage gradually expanded and became the region's base of power. Just like Rome, Carthage was a semi-democratic republic with its own senate and judiciary. But there were also some pretty hefty differences between the two. While Rome was big into farming and stabbing people in the neck, the Carthaginians, on the other hand, just like their Phoenician forefathers, had built their power through trade and navigating the waves. They went here and there, selling ivory tusks, gold, and slaves. And as a result, they were rolling in it. Whenever they weren't busy swimming around in their copious hoards of money, in their spare time, they also possibly enjoyed sacrificing their children to Baal, the god of... Let me just check my notes. Ah, yes. Plant fertility. Oh boy, these figs are looking too good. Maybe if I throw my son into a burning pit of fire, they'll grow. Have you tried watering them, Dad? No, try that second. As a result of all their trading, Carthage had emerged as one of the Mediterranean's superpowers. But wait, they said. Rome? What the heck is that? Well, I know it's a pretty obscure little country that you've probably never heard of. But this spunky young nation was about to upset the entire region's balance of power. Initially, the two sides enjoyed relatively friendly relations, and had even signed a couple treaties. But it was a relationship that was practically destined to turn sour. See, Rome had a thing where they liked to aggressively expand their boundaries, often viewing such expansion as a defensive act. Kinda like when you would kill your neighbor, because you knew eventually they would have tried to kill you first. Meanwhile, Carthage was extremely protective of its wealthy trade network. So if you put a very strategically important island between them, well, 2 + 2 = war. Tensions rose, and the two sides began viewing each other with increasing disdain. The hard-working Romans looked across water at the money-hungry Carthaginians and said, "Look at those dishonest crooks. Bet they've never done an honest day's work in their lives." And the Carthaginians looked back and said, "Look at those simple-minded brutes. Bet they've never sacrificed a baby in their lives." Yeah! While war between the two superpowers seemed inevitable, the event that finally triggered it was a little unexpected. The whole thing began with a few simple mad lads on a wild night out. These mad lads are called the Mamertines. They were Italian mercenaries employed by the tyrant of Syracuse here. But when he died, his successor said, "Sorry fellas, we don't need any big burly men with sharp sticks anymore. You can all go home." The Mamertines, as it turned out, didn't want to go home. So instead, they went to the nearby town of Messana and said, "Hey man, we are but poor little buff boys without a home. May we come in?" Aw, poor fellas. Sure thing. Just so long as you promise not to massacre all of us. We promise. The Mamertines then massacred all of them. Well, not all of them, just the men. And they stole their homes and families. Ha! This is my house now. This is my best dad ever mug now. and you guys are my new family. Son, wanna go play catch with your old papa? You're not my real dad! Ugh, teenager. Only just finished conquering the Italian peninsula, so they were kind of tired. Plus, the Mamertines were all the way across the water. They had never made a leap like that before. So you would assume that to avoid any conflict with Carthage, the exhausted Romans would probably sit this one out. But you would assume wrong. Rome just couldn't resist a good chance for war. Why? Well, there's something you gotta understand. See, as a republic, they were hell-bent on preventing any one man from ever gaining too much power, and so rather than having one leader, Rome had two, called consuls, who shared power. These consuls could also only serve for 1 year at a time before new consuls were elected. These measures to limit the powers of the consuls were noble, but had an interesting side effect. The consuls knew they had just 1 year to try and gain as much glory and prestige as possible, something that was very important in Roman society. And the best way of gaining glory and prestige? Military victory, of course. The Roman political system basically ended up encouraging these consuls to go out and be as aggressive as your Italian grandmother when you don't eat all the spaghetti. And so the glory-seeking consuls convinced the people to vote in favor of going to Messana. And in they went. Upon the arrival of Ordis, that's a crucifixion. Hello, sir. What are you doing here? Aren't you meant to be in Messana? Yeah, but the Romans showed up. So you just left? Sure did. Oh, you better believe that's a crucifixion. The Roman consuls were rewarded for victory, and therefore tended to be aggressive go-getters. By contrast, the Carthaginian generals were brutally punished for failure, and so they tended to be more cautious and restrained. This dynamic is helpful for understanding some of the crazy things that happened during the Punic Wars. So, the Romans had crossed over to Messana, and now there was some rallying. Hit that panic button. This turn of events was unacceptable to both Carthage and Syracuse, so the traditional enemies teamed up to kick the Romans off their island. They surrounded the city and said, "Hey, you jerks! This isn't your island! Come out of there at once!" See, Bill, you just gotta speak with authority. That's what being an alpha male is all about. Hey, man. The Roman legions came to engage the Carthaginians in battle, and they sent them packing. With the Battle of Messana, whether intended or not, by going to help the Mamertines, the two sides had just slipped into an all-out war. With the initial Roman victory, towns across Sicily, including Syracuse, began switching legions, because winning is more fun. But the Carthaginians weren't about to just give up that easily. In 262 BC, they began building up their forces at Agrigentum. So the Romans, being aggressive go-getters, aggressively go-got them. The Romans immediately laid siege, hoping to starve out the Carthaginian garrison. However, because this was the first time Rome had been fighting outside the Italian peninsula, across the water, they struggled to supply their forces, and before long, the Romans were as starving as the Carthaginians they were besieging. They had to forage for food, leaving them open to ambush. And when Carthaginian reinforcements arrived, creating a double siege, things got really bad. Everybody starved each other for months until nobody could take it anymore, and they all finally came out for battle, which Rome won. Here's the report from the recent siege at Agrigentum. So, we killed 30,000 while only suffering 7,000 losses? That's amazing! We're the best! Yes, sir. Oops, those are the wrong way around. What? We lost 30,000? We're the worst! But we won, right? Yes, sir. But we also got our asses kicked. Yes, sir. So are we the best or the worst? Yes, sir. The Romans won at Agrigentum because they were aggressive go-getters, and they now began eyeing up the possibility of conquering the entire island. Sicily was an island. Islands are surrounded by water. A strong navy would be vital for supplying troops and winning the war. Here,